Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we're going to be talking about the book Eloquent JavaScript. That's right, we're going back to the JavaScript book by Mergen Haverbeek, and today we're continuing along with the chapter that we've been slowly diving through, going section by section. Chapter 8, Bugs and Errors. If you guys remember, in the last video we did, we introduced this concept of try catches and how you can use this new system or these keywords to provide blocks in your code to better able to handle errors so that you can give the user a better experience and not just end your program abruptly, send some weird call stack error back to the user and have your user wondering, what the heck just happened. Try catches are a very nice way to do that, and I showed it in the previous video through this API, just practice little Node app Express server that I was working with, and I showed it with a couple endpoints here on how we can do that. Specifically in these, I had a error handler, so I funnel everything to the error handler. If you're not passing in a certain parameter in your request body, then I'm just defaulting it and then I'm sending that back. So the error handler was a nice way to, well, no pun intended, but handle the errors. And you can see that here from another test. It's expecting that you send in a name. If you don't send in the name, then we're going to throw this error. The error is caught in this catch block here. Then we're throwing it to the error handler by using this next keyword that's provided by Express. Express comes with, it's a Node framework, and it comes with its own error handler. But I had created my own customized one just to give more visibility on what exactly is happening. All that to say, really the big lesson from last time, you try something out. If you have an error inside the try catch, or inside your try block, it will get caught in the catch block. If you throw an error in your try block, or if something throws an error in your try block, then it will get caught in the catch block. You can log it and you can better handle it. Very cool. Today we're going to build off this because in the next section, Mergen dives deeper into exceptions. The title of this section is Cleaning Up After Exceptions. Didn't have a PowerPoint for it. I thought it was just better to show you guys an example of what's going on. Mergen writes, he starts off this section, and Mergen writes, the effect of an exception is another kind of control flow. Every action that might cause an exception, which is pretty much every function call and property access, might cause control to suddenly leave your code. So what does this mean? This means when code has several side effects, even if it's regular control flow, an exception might prevent some of them from taking place. So what he introduces in this section is a way to have a default behavior that happens no matter if there's an error thrown or if there's not. Now, if there's errors that are thrown, no problem to handle it in this catch block. I do this all the time, but maybe for better organizational purposes, you might want to save your catch block for logging an error and showing your user something useful as a response to the API. So if they forget to type in their name, maybe they're registering to a website, right? And they forgot to type in their first name. And you just want to show a quick error that says, hey, please send in your first name. You don't want to build, like what I did here, you don't want to build a default name for them, right? You just want to prompt them, hey, we caught an error. Please try again. You forgot the first name. So they try again. They get it on the second time. Great. The catch block might be better for that. Now, what you could do is you can then have an additional portion of your function, of your endpoint, of your try catch block that does something by default to help what Mergen talks about here, clean up anything outstanding. And that's where we're going to get into a finally block. So I had created this new endpoint here, user, and then I bring it into my server.js. I have this here as /userfi. So in order for us to call this new endpoint, we would have to go to localhost 3000 /userfi/user. And I created this just as something that's a little bit more meaningful. So the intent of this endpoint is, let me just get rid of that. We don't really need that anymore. Is, hey, I am maybe a gaming website, and /user is used to post a new user. So we're going to create a new user. It's our first time going to this website, and our front end is going to call /user when somebody registers for the first time on this website. Okay, we have a try catch block here where we're going to create this new user object, and we're going to initialize it as an empty object. And we're going to assign the user some game tokens. We're going to subtract them from our token bank, and I have a note there that says we have a limited supply of tokens, so we only have 500, right? So we're going to subtract it from our token bank. We're going to check if the first and last name is there on whatever is coming in, and then we're going to send that response back to the user. Now, if something is amiss, you don't send in a first and a last name, well, we're going to catch it in this error. How are we doing that? We have this function here, get first and last name. This is where we're going to be doing a check. Hey, did you send in a first name? Did you send in the last name? If either one of those is empty, hey, you didn't provide a name. We're going to throw this error. Else, if you did, we're going to assign it using this dot notation to the user object that we passed in, which is here on line 10. Okay, so let's see this run in action. Great. Let me pull up my terminal here because we're going to have some logs that might show. Okay. So we're here. We're doing a post request to our userfi /user. Let's purposefully try to get an error to appear. So we have our object here, our request body, and we're just going to send in the first name. Let's see what happens. Please try again. We get a 400 bad request, by the way. Please try again. We have an error. No first or last name was provided. Please try again. So a little bit redundant. I might want to probably not include the second please try again because I already have the first one. But you can see here what's happening. So user gets created, right? We come down here. We're assigning a game tokens. We're going to go to get the first and the last name. This is where that error is being thrown. And then it's getting caught here. We're logging it. Error and post request to user. You might be able to see that. Yeah, this right here is what's coming in on line 18. And then we're sending back a 400 error with this useful piece of messaging. Please try it again. Okay, great. I want you to notice something, though, what happened here. The token bank account, again, because we only have a limited amount of tokens, is now 400. 400. Now, we just took away tokens from our bank, and we gave them to a user that is not registered yet. Remember, we didn't send in the last name. So we didn't do that. We got an error back saying, hey, you basically need to try this again. But even though it wasn't a legitimate, successful registration, we still gave them the tokens. We still took tokens from our bank, which is not good. We only have a limited amount of those. So now if we send in a legitimate, let's do this. Let's now send in a legitimate last name or a legitimate request here, right? First name, last name. Now let's send this. Hey, great. This created. This is really good. We have a legitimately registered user, first and last name, game tokens. We assign them game tokens for the website. It's created. Let's see here. Yeah, no, we didn't get any errors. And this is fine. This is good. This is what we wanted it to do. But now watch as I maybe change this, and let's purposefully throw an error here again. So we're going to try to create another user, this time first name Chris, but again, we're forgetting the last name here. So we're going to get this error. Hey, you didn't provide a last name, 400 bad request. Come over here to the terminal, and we see the token bank account as 200. So I want this to just illustrate that when we sent the first request with just the first name of Brian, we still subtracted 400. We still subtracted the 400. When we created a legitimate user, Brian Thomas, first name and last name provided, hey, we assigned them the users. You could see that. Where was it? Oh, I guess it doesn't save it. But you could see that in the response that we got back. Brian Thomas has 100 tokens now. But now we sent another bad request, and the token bank account keeps subtracting. This is bad because we're going to run out of tokens here to give newly registered users. So what Mergen talks about is a very simple way to do this is, hey, don't assign this user game tokens unless they have a first and last name. So the very easy thing would be to just move lines 12 and 13 after line 14, right? And just do something like this. That would probably be the easiest way to do it. Or what you could do to mitigate this, let me stop this from running, is you can add this finally block and provide some default behavior that happens. Once this user is created, and if it's created properly. So in the finally block, this is a block that is included with a try and catch block that has default behavior. So whether anything in the try block throws an error or not, it'll always execute what's in the finally block. So we can see this happening if we just do this console. And let me post this here because we're going to use that. Let's do console.log. Finally block. And I always like to put the asterisks here. Save it. Now let's run this. And you're going to see whether I send in, if I purposefully try to throw an error here by just sending in the first name, right? It's a bad request. We need the last name, right? Come back to the terminal. It still goes to the finally block. The finally block always runs, whether we have something go inside the catch block or whether it doesn't, nothing gets caught. There's no error thrown. And you can see this again if I do last name Chris Thomas, right? Legitimate name. And again, we can see it still goes to the finally block, whether there's an error or not, whether there's an error thrown or not. So the finally block is a great way, Mergen says, on to clean up after exceptions happen, or to have default behavior that you want to run or want to execute no matter what happens. So if we want to assign our user game tokens, yes, you can totally do it after the first and last name are checked for. Or how about utilize this finally block and do it here? Now, we can't just, provide the user with game tokens here. We would still need to have some sort of check here on whether, this user is a legitimate user. It has a first and a last name. So, we could provide something like this. Check first and last name. Let's send in the user. I am basically going to create another function, a helper function here called check first name and last name. We're going to include it down at the bottom here. Let's change this. We're only taking in one argument in this function. That is the argument of user. Let's clean this up a bit, and we're kind of going to do something similar to what we did in testing here. Yes, where we just want to check. We basically want to check this. User dot first name does not equal null. And user dot last name does not equal null. So this is going to check if it's a legitimate user, and if it has a first and a last name, now we can assign it the tokens. So let's rerun this. And I want to do something here. Let's log out. Let's log out the token count so you guys can see that we're only going to give legitimate tokens to legitimate users. Token bank. Yep. Now let's restart our server. So now let's try setting in a bad user. Hey, great, please try again. Error, no first or last name was provided. And cool. Token count is still 500. That's what we initialized it with. Now notice here this console log, maybe just for your guys' knowledge here, better to put this console log here maybe, just so you guys can see that, again, this finally block is default. It will always run no matter if there's an error thrown or not. So if I rerun this again, we didn't provide a last name, but we're always coming in that finally block. And you can see the token count is maintained. Now let's uncomment this. Let's send in a legitimate user. Hey, great. And we came into the finally block. Token count. Token bank is still 500. Oh, that's interesting. Token bank still 500. Okay. Well, that is interesting. It's not decrementing. But I think it is going in there. Hang on. Let's try one thing. Let's put in a little debug statement here. has first and last name. Because it definitely got created. I'm guessing maybe last name, first name. Did I spell it wrong? No. Let's save it. Let's rerun this. Let's do this. Finally block token count. Okay. I think I know why. Oh, JS. I think I had the first name here spelled wrong because I'm sending it as camel case first name, last name, and I had all lowercase on this first name here. So sorry about that, guys. Let's just for our sanity, check this again. Legitimate user. Yes. Okay. Okay. Finally, this is working now. So we sent in a legitimate user. We do the check. Hey, it's a legitimate user. And we're going to give it tokens. And that's what we're sending. Or this is the newly created user with its tokens, and it's properly subtracting from our token bank. Subsequently, again, if we send in a illegitimate user, we didn't send in a last name. Okay, that's fine. Please retry, and we're not taking away from our token bank. So a cool little way to have an additional path of control flow in your code when you use a try-catch block. One other thing I was going to mention here, we noticed that even for a legitimate user, we're sending the user object back. But the one problem with this that you guys might have seen, and I wish that it would have kept the, oh, well, yeah. Here we go. We're not sending it back with the tokens attribute on this object back to the user. So that could be like one downside. And maybe we would just have to rework the behavior a little bit with this finally block, but we're sending a response back to the user without the tokens attached to it. So you could say that maybe this is a little bit, it's not structured in the best way because, you know, a user is going to look at the response maybe and say, oh, well, where are my tokens? Yeah, my tokens aren't here. So it might be better in this situation to have these tokens maybe up here after line 12 so that if it is a legitimate user, then we can, you know, we can attach it to the user object and then send it back to the user. But just a really quick thing, you know, really quick thing on how to use a finally block. Again, this could probably be done in a better way with our example gaming website tokens, etc. But just one extra thing to keep in mind when using try-catch blocks, that you can have behavior that defaults using a finally block, and you can use it to your advantage to clean up anything or have any default behavior within your application. And that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much. Hopefully this brought some value and brought some clarity on how you can use try-catch blocks, try-catch finally blocks. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Next time, we'll probably be back into it with Atomic Habits. I'll probably just try to switch back and forth between these two books, but thank you guys very much for listening. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.